Last 180 of the day. Alison leads BSR's sustainability management practice. She also happens to be one of the smartest people I know, and I know quite a few smart people. Her talk is pretty timely. Everyone's heard of the Panama Papers. You've probably heard about the recent Paradise Papers, so come on up.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk for a few moments about a 180 shift that is still going on in corporate transparency. We've spent a lot of the last few days talking about what is definitely the biggest story of 2017, which is about misinformation, perceptions, and the effects on various elections. That's a huge story, but there's something else going on as well. We might draw an analogy between social media and the stock market, in that what it primarily measures is trust, perception, and sentiment. But underneath the stock market, somewhere, there is still a real economy. And the real economy of information is about things like company and asset ownership, bankruptcy, litigation, political financing, and tax structures. And there's a transformation going on there too. The Trump campaign might, for example, be able to spin Manafort's role any way it wishes using social media, but we can still prove that he spent nearly $1 million on rugs. So I worked for many years in corporate investigations in the Middle East and Africa, trying to answer difficult questions for my clients about who had really bribed who to acquire this company or asset, and who was really behind the cancellation of these licenses or contracts. At some point, my information trail would always run dry. The company would be registered in the BVI, the property was owned by a trust or had been bought with cash. The legal records didn't exist. At that point, I would turn to my network of human sources, just like any good intelligence agency. Buying and selling information and sourcing rumor from fact was what I did all day. In 2010, I made a shift away from that work and into responsible business. And that very same year saw what we might call the birth of hyper-transparency. This happened when WikiLeaks released a diplomatic cable that outlined the network of assets that the Tunisian ruling family had secured, mainly through extortion and expropriation. Citizen outrage about this led to the overthrow of the regime and informed the trajectory of the Arab Spring. Since then, we've had LuxLeaks, Snowden, the Panama Papers, and then just this weekend, the Paradise Papers, which tells us quite a lot of interesting stuff about the offshore assets of Wilbur Ross, Bono, and the British royal family. We've also seen a lot of leaks from and hacks into mainstream corporate New York law firms, as well as internal information from companies themselves. None of this is about fake news. All of it concerns the real economy of information. So there are three things to note here. There is a dominant whistleblowing model today of activists leaking vast amounts of confidential information to the public. This is proving quite successful, and it's definitely not going away. Two, there's no such thing as corporate secrets anymore, and companies need to really behave as if everything they say or do might become public. They're definitely not adapting fast enough. Three, questions of corruption and transparency have gone mainstream. Citizens are taking to the streets in Brazil, Russia, the US, South Korea, Malaysia, Turkey, etc., etc. Young people are upset that they can't buy property in New York or San Francisco because laundered offshore money is driving up property prices. Everywhere, citizens are discovering that government officials are stealing money that could be used to provide education for their children, and they're very angry. If we put all this in the context of automation, vanishing jobs, a shifting social contract in an aging population, public anger looks only set to grow. Because if business isn't providing employment and isn't paying its taxes, what exactly is its value to society? This suggests to me that offshore financing, tax and lobbying are going to become the big battlegrounds of corporate reputation tomorrow. Thank you very much.